Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of To The Point with me, Frank Pereira, on Rajya Sabha Television. On the show today is a very special guest with me. She is the Foreign Affairs Minister for Mexico. I have with me on the program Ms. Claudia Ruiz Massieu. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on Rajya Sabha Television.
Thank you, Frank, for giving me this opportunity to talk to your audience.
And welcome to India as well. And I'd like to start on a very simple note and ask you for the purpose of your visit to India.
Well, the purpose of my visit to India is a very simple one. A couple of months ago, during the UN General Assembly in New York in September, President Peña Nieto met with Prime Minister Modi. In that meeting, they talked and decided that India and Mexico have a great potential to do great things together in the 21st century. So they gave us instructions, the President Peña to myself and Prime Minister Modi to the Indian Minister for External Affairs to get together and develop a common agenda in which we can work to strengthen our relations. So I'm here today to do that exactly and to talk with my colleague and see what we are going to do next.
So talking about this common agenda, are there any key focus areas for you, and is there something that you want to focus on?
Well, yes, absolutely. One very important thing to understand is that President Peña and Prime Minister Modi recognized each other. They recognized each other as reformers, as leaders with a vision for their countries, and a common vision regarding what they want for their countries in the coming decades. In that sense, they identified some areas that in which we complement each other and in which we can work together. For example, the Smart Cities initiative here in India. In Mexico, we have a very similar initiative regarding urban planning, urban development, housing, and how to use technology to make people's lives better. So we have decided, Minister Soraja and myself, we have decided that we were going to include in our common agenda, in which we're going to be working together for the next months, previous to a visit by Prime Minister Modi to Mexico, and then a reciprocal visit from Mr. President Peña Nieto to India. We're going to work around housing, urban planning, smart cities. We're also going to be working on innovation and fostering SMEs to include more people, especially women and young people, into the economic trends that we have. We're going to be working together on science and technology projects, on education, and how to expand education to include new skills needed for the new century. So it's a broad agenda. We are countries that have had a close relationship for over 65 years now. But in the 21st century, when we have this legal architecture, legal framework in which we have been cooperating to have cultural exchanges, to have people-to-people contact, we sort of made a stop and said, what do we want to do that's different? How do we take advantages of what's going on in each of our countries? And we found that we have many similarities, many areas of opportunities to increase trade, investment, but also people-to-people contact, share experiences, and contribute to one another's well-being.
Indeed, that's a very good agenda, and we hope that it works. But talking about how both the countries' ties date back to many decades, there's something interesting that I came across. I think Mexico was the first Latin American country to accept or to honor India's, to recognize, thank you for giving me that word, to recognize India's independence post 1947. And since then, both countries have had very cordial relationships. How do you take this relationship to the next level?
Well, some years ago, Mexico and India decided that we have a privileged relationship. What President Peña Nieto and Prime Minister Modi have instructed us to do now is to define what we want to do with that privileged relationship. We have to work on very specific programs and initiatives that yield results that are very tangible for people and that are very visible for our communities. That's why my colleague, Minister Soraj, and myself decided today when we met to set a very straightforward agenda, not in terms of let's cooperate, generally speaking, with education, but what kind of cooperation programs we want to foster within this general umbrella. We want to foster dual education programs. We want to share experiences regarding how to promote women empowerment. We want to share experiences on how to better prevent natural disasters deriving from climate change. So we're working on developing this very punctual agenda, and in order to do so, we are going to have a number of high-level meetings in the coming months. We in Mexico are going to be hosting a high economic dialogue, a high dialogue in science and technology, and then I am going to be hosting Minister Soraj in Mexico in September, around September, for the binational meeting in which we are going to see the specific initiatives we have been developing, how are they going, and how fast we can give results to our leaders so that we can host Prime Minister Modi perhaps at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year.
Indeed. So have you come here with a specific brief, or have you come with an open mind waiting to take back something interesting from India?
Well, I would say both things. I came here with a very good idea of the things that we want to contribute to this relationship and of the areas of opportunity that we have found in India that could also help us develop in specific areas. For example, recently in Mexico, under President Peña's leadership, we implemented a very ambitious agenda of reforms, and one key sector in which the reform that President Peña led has given great results is the energy sector. With this reform, we are now able to have private investment in all the areas concerning oil production, electricity, and gas. And we want, of course, to have Indian companies invest in our energy sector, but we are also wanting to know more and to benefit from the experience India has in developing renewable energy. So that's one specific area that we wanted to put on the table and that was met with a lot of interest. But we were also open to new ideas because we understand that as countries that have many decades of a good relationship, there's always a need to find innovative areas of collaboration and cooperation. And we found some talking together with my colleague here in the Ministry of External Affairs. One example that we did not have formulated in very precise terms, but after talking together, we found is a good area of opportunity. The engagement and the policy that India has toward the Indian community, the Indian diaspora living elsewhere in the world. Mexico has a very large Mexican community living in other places, specifically in the United States. And we are just beginning to formulate specific policies to engage not with the first generation of Mexicans that live in the United States. We have a very strong network of consulates that give services, accompaniment, and protection to those Mexicans. But we need to develop a new way to engage with the larger Mexican community, second and third generation Mexican Americans, and that was a new area of opportunity that we found to be interesting for both of us, and that in which we can learn from each other.
Indeed, there is much to learn from each other as far as the relationship itself is concerned. But as far as trade and as far as the economy is concerned, both countries have rather large economies, and both countries are emerging economies and doing well as well. So do you believe that, trade as it stands right now between the two countries is sufficient, or do you think that there's a lot of scope there for both the countries?
Well, one of the very interesting things is that both countries share a lot of similarities. We're both regional powers, we're both strong economies, part of a G20 group. And even though we've had a good relationship for decades and we have trade has increased by almost 300% in the last 10 years, it is not enough. It does not reflect the sizes of our economies. It does not reflect the many strengths of our economies. And we are also set to work together on how to increase that trade. We need to have our business communities know more about the other country, about the many opportunities each country has, and to identify areas in which we can create synergies. Most of our exports, for example, to India are in oil, but we are a country that is a large manufacturing exporter. We also are a very large exporter in agro industry. So those are some areas in which we would like to see our trade increase. And for the part of India, of course, we also have trade, but not really trade in the volume that really reflects what we can do together. And that's one of the specific areas in which we're going to be working together, identify what we can do to increase trade, to facilitate trade, and also investment and the presence of Indian companies in Mexico and of Mexican companies here in India.
Indeed. Talking about the Indian companies and the Mexican companies, there's much to talk about, and there's so much that we can touch upon. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that on the other side of this short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television in conversation with the Foreign Affairs Minister of Mexico, Ms. Claudia Ruiz Massieu. Ms. Ruiz Massieu, let's talk about the Indian companies in Mexico now. There are several big companies that have invested in Mexico, and they're doing reasonably well. So what is the impact that these companies have had on the Mexican economy, and what's being done to ensure that, they get what they want in Mexico?
Well, Mexico is a very open economy that has a great environment for foreign companies that want to establish themselves in Mexico and also that want to invest in Mexico. As of today, we have over 170 Indian companies that have invested in Mexico and over 60 companies that have already presence in Mexico in the IT sector, electronics, pharmaceutical, packaging, tires. And we want to continue to have more investment and more presence. We are one of the countries that has the best business environment for companies to settle and for companies to invest. We are a country that has also a vast network of free trade agreements. We have 11 free trade agreements that give us access to over 1.2 billion people in different markets all over the world. Of course, Mexico has a unique geographical position as well. We are part of the North American region, close to the United States market, the Canadian market, but also we are a bridge to the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. Yes. So that gives us a unique advantage, paired with our free trade agreement network that gives companies wanting to be in Mexico a unique platform to export their products, their goods, and their services. So that's what we offer, a safe business environment, a very attractive business environment, a unique platform where you can access the Pacific, the Atlantic Ocean, North America, Central and South America, and also human capital that's highly skilled in manufacturing goods of great added value. We have really diversified our economy. We have diversified our industries. We have today become a manufacturing powerhouse. We have become a very important hub for the aerospace industry, the automotive industry, and we have chains of value that are increasingly integrated to world chains of value, regional chains of value, both through the North American Free Trade Agreement and through other mechanisms of integration, such as the Pacific Alliance, which we have with other countries in our region, such as Peru, Colombia, and Chile.
So if you wanted to send out a message to Indian companies to invest and to come to Mexico, what is that message going to be, and what would you like to say to them?
Well, I'd like to say to them that Mexico is the land of opportunity. We have the legal framework to give certainty to investments. We have the legal framework and incentives to promote foreign companies to coming to Mexico. We are a unique platform for exporting goods and services to the countries with which we have free trade agreements and that are our neighbors. And we have the skilled labor and the skilled human resources to make your companies more productive and more competitive. You should come to Mexico because you will not be disappointed.
Okay, so let's talk about Mexican companies in India. Now, one popular company that comes to my mind immediately because of their sheer presence across major cities in India is Cinepolis. I know that they're doing wonderfully well, setting up theaters and theater screens across several cities in India. So, is it easy for Mexican companies to do business in India?
Well, we've talked to the companies that have presence in India, and they are all very enthusiastic about the opportunities that can be found here in India in terms of the size of the market, in terms of the appetite for new products and new services. Cinepolis, for example, has over 200 cinemas here in India that show a different experience for people that go to those
I've been
movies.
to many of them.
You
so
have?
So I know
well,
how
they are in fact, I think, the premier Mexican company investing in India, and they're looking to expand some more. But we also have a presence from companies in other sectors. Well, in the entertainment sector, we also have Kidsania, which is opening, I think, 2 centers. They are a purely Mexican company, and they offer also a unique experience. But we have companies that are in other types of businesses, the automotive business, for example. We want more Mexican companies to become more internationalized, to come to India, and the experience, these 60 companies that already have presence in India is instrumental to getting other companies interested in coming. And what we are planning to do, and that's part also of what we talked about with my colleague, is foster the mutual participation in trade fairs, in trade seminars, promoting sort of fam trips where business leaders, business community can go to the other country, meet the other business community, talk about specific opportunities, and talk about joint initiatives. Another such sector that I think we can have great success in promoting in both countries is the tourism sector as well. Mexico has a very strong touristic industry, and India is a wonderful market for us, for investing, and also Mexico is a good market for touristic enterprises and companies in India to invest in. So we have many areas in which we can create synergies, many areas in which we can complement each other, and many areas in which we can invest together and grow together.
You know, interestingly, I was going to talk to you about tourism because that's the next sector that I wanted to cover with you. You know, as far as tourism is concerned, what is the connectivity like between India and Mexico? Is it easy for an Indian tourist, say, to go to Mexico or for a Mexican tourist to come to India?
Well, one of the challenges that we face is connectivity. As of today, we do not have direct connectivity to fly to or from India to Mexico. You need to have at least one layover either in Europe or in North America, Canada, or the United States. And the other thing that is important that people here know is that any citizen that has an American visa does not need an additional visa to enter Mexico. So that is also a very good thing, a trade facilitating measure that we have implemented to promote more Indian people visiting our country. If you do not have an American visa, you have to apply for one here in our consulate in the embassy in New Delhi. But if you have an American visa, you can visit Mexico without any further requirement.
So tourism is a big sector for Mexico because it contributes a lot to the GDP as such. But then when we talk about Mexico, or at least what we see here in in the Indian media or elsewhere, is the fact that we get a lot of publicity. Mexico gets a lot of publicity for its drug-related killing because of the mafia that is there, and somehow tourists are skeptical, or at least the people that I have spoken to in India, the first thing that comes to their mind is the drug-related killings. So is that something that you're looking at? Is that something that worries you?
Well, that's something that we are addressing. In terms of internally, well, we're dealing with the challenges we face in security. But we are aware that the perception in some countries is very different from the reality.
Yes.
Like any other country, we have security challenges in very specific and geographically located places. And those places are not touristic destinations. So we are also dealing and addressing that challenge by communicating to the markets that Mexico is a safe touristic destination, that tourists are safe in our touristic destinations, and by dealing with information objectively and, let's say, dispassionately. So in order to give certainty and to give veritable information for the consumer. And we have been having great success. The proof is that tourism to Mexico, international tourism to Mexico, has grown steadily since President Peña Nieto became president almost 3 years ago. Its international tourism as a whole has grown around 4.5%. International tourism to Mexico has grown at least 9 or 10% steadily for the past 3 years. And from India, it has grown over 20%. So we are a country that's safe and valued for tourists, just as we are a country that's safe and valued for investors.
Indeed. Talking about perception, there's a wrong perception or a misconception about India as well. India being a land of snake charmers and cows roaming around all over the place. So I know exactly what you mean when you talk about perception. Let's, talking about drugs and drug lords, let's talk about the most famous one, El Chapo Guzman. He was recently apprehended once again. Not once, but many times he has fled from high security prisons. And I understand that when he was apprehended this time in January, you were actually with the Interior Minister, and he got a message saying that, El Chapo Guzman has been apprehended yet again. So take us through that and what exactly happened there.
Well, through the collaboration of the different Mexican institutions and agencies that deal with law enforcement and intelligence, we were able to locate and apprehend this person you referred to. And yes, in January, we always host in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs an annual meeting where all our ambassadors and all our consuls in the world come to Mexico. We gather together for a week. We revise where we are at. We give new mandates, and we listen to people, and we set an agenda. And we invite other ministers and cabinet members to talk about what they're doing, so that our representatives in the world know what to project and what to inform in the countries they are at. And on that specific day, the Minister of the Interior, as well as the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Navy, were there with us. They were sharing with us what they're doing and sharing the message they wanted our ambassadors and consuls to give to the world. When the Minister of the Interior received some information, he didn't tell us at that moment what it was, but he excused himself from the conference he was giving. He went to call the president and informed him that this criminal had been apprehended. He came back and he gave the announcement and the news to the ambassadors and consuls. And it was a very exciting moment, because these are the people that go out to the world and tell to the world what's going on in Mexico. And to have these very good news that show that Mexican authorities and Mexican institutions work, they do their job with conscientiousness and with responsibility, was, I think, a great send-off. And they all went back to their countries of station with high hopes and high spirits.
Indeed. And then on that note, we'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of To The Point, because we've come to the end of the program. Thank you so much for joining us. But before I let you go, one final thought, one message that you want to send out to the Indian people, or maybe even the Mexican people.
Well, India and Mexico are two countries that share a lot of things. We have a lot of similarities. We have great heritage that we're proud of. We have same values, but we have one very important thing. We share a vision of the future, and of a future that we can build together with prosperity and inclusion for our peoples.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's a pleasure having you on To The Point on Rajya Sabha Television. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching. See you again next time.